Suns can do a little celebrating with a W here. For the game, got it! Off the glass, Devin Booker!
You're listening to The Solar Panel, a Phoenix Suns show, part of Almighty Baller Radio.
And this was actually a text thread, a tweet thread, I should say, between two different Suns players. The first Suns player tweeted, "Jay-Z is the undisputed GOAT, don't at me." The other Suns player responded, "George Strait, ... look him up."
George Strait, really? All right. So I'm going to go Earl Watson said, "Jay-Z, don't at me." And I'm going to say, who the heck would like George Strait? That's on Twitter. That's a former or current Sun. Jeez.
Like,
God.
These are active Suns players.
I don't like to give you that hint, but yes, they are either active right now in the organization under a player or a coach or an assistant coach or something like that.
Lord, who the heck on this roster would even know George Strait? God, I got nothing on the George Strait one, but I think I'll go Earl Watson for the Jay-Z.
I don't even think Jay Triano is on Twitter, but if he is, he might be the George Strait guy. I don't want to pigeonhole or anything like that, but I'm having a hard time figuring out a Suns player who would actually be a huge George Strait fan. So I'm trying to go with an older coach.
Alan Williams maybe on George Strait, maybe. I'll say that.
Davon Reed tweeted, "Jay-Z is the undisputed GOAT, don't at me." And Alec Peters responded, "George Strait, look him up."
I forgot Alec Peters is even on this team.
Good for you, Alec Peters.
Congratulations. That's the one time you'll be mentioned on the solar panel before you're relegated to the Northern Arizona Suns.
Let's not hope not. That young man has a bright and promising future as a stretch four. And you know what else also has a bright and promising future? What you're listening to, the Solar Panel, a Phoenix Suns show, part of Almighty Baller Radio. You can find us on Twitter and on Facebook at Sun Solar Panel. Today on the show, all three of us are here. We have Dave King. You can follow him individually on Twitter at Dave King NBA. Greg Esposito, you can find him on Espo. My name's Tim Tompkins, and you can find me at Radio Tim NBA. Each week on the show, we like to give you guys a shout-out for leaving us a shout-out on iTunes, leaving us a review, because there is nothing more that you can do that helps us out more than leaving us a review. And this week we have one from
Dara Steiner, there's a bunch of R's at the end, says, "Not a Suns fan, but these guys have good takes. 5-star review." I guess that's a good review. I'll take it. So
was that after last week's episode?
That was, and he didn't say Tim sucks, but I think it's implied, so we'll just roll with that. By the way, Tim, did you make the Suns Dancers team or not?
I don't know if you listened to it, but I made sure everybody knew that was the first job I have ever been turned down because I was overqualified.
Overqualified.
By the way, before we hop into this, I got to bring back a couple things that we talked about on last week's episode. Not that anybody listened to it, but I'll bring.
Well, that's why you're bringing it back. Maybe more people will hear it.
Well, no, I think, Dave, you'll enjoy this. Dave made a dad joke about enjoying an Arizona lottery commercial where the actor says he's got cheese in his pockets, all right? This is like the 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon kind of thing. But on the Sun Solar Panel Facebook page, I open it up and I get the following message the other day. "Hey, a buddy of mine is a big fan of your podcast and sent me an episode, and I wanted to say thank you for the shout-out. I play Derek, the cheese guy, in the Arizona lottery commercials. That really made my day. I improvised that line from Michael. How fantastic is that?"
That is awesome. That made my day that he got connected to us and said he really appreciated how much somebody listening to that commercial like that line, because I just thought that was hilarious.
Our reach is so good that you mention an actor and they come on and message us. So, Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Any of you guys, feel free to message into the show. We love you guys.
And what about singers? We could have George Strait on.
We could have, or Alex Peters. Either way.
We're waiting for George Strait to message us about having been on one of our episodes. Yes.
All right, Dave. And you had a question last week about why do zombies, because we were talking about Brandon the Walking Dead Knight blowing out his ACL. You wanted to know why zombies actually limp, right? And I told you I was going to talk to a friend of the show, Rhett Reese, who wrote Zombieland, and get the answer. So he said, I think it originated from their bodies decaying after they died. 28 days later had infected people as zombies, and they did not limp. So there you go, Dave, from an expert on zombies about why zombies limp.
Wait. He's saying 28 days later they stopped limping?
Oh, that's a movie, 28 Days Later.
No. Yeah, it's a movie about zombies, and they didn't limp in that movie because they were infected and not actually dead. So there's your answer.
But the actual dead zombies limp for what reason?
Because their bodies are decaying. So they don't have full use of their joints because their bodies are decaying.
Mm-hmm.
They're also dead. That's another reason they don't have full use of their joints, right?
I think we're overthinking this. It's not real, Dave. There's no real reason.
I would expect to have lesser use of my joints if my heart was not pumping.
Look, Dave, I'm kind of upset that I went to the effort to get you an expert, and it's still not good enough for you. All right,
you're gonna have him on the podcast with me so I can ask him some dead questions.
I'm sure it'll be our least listened to episode ever, breaking down zombies on the sun's solar panel.
Well, we might have to do that during the off season because we are in August, gentlemen, and there is not a whole lot going on.
The other question is why they just die with a single bullet to the chest.
To the head. You have to shoot him in the head.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. They only rock backwards on bullets to any other body part.
Right.
But man, if you hit their head, then they're done.
Yep.
Got it.
It's actually quite impressive. And what also is impressive is I want to give a shout out to a listener, Steve White, who tweeted us at Sun Solar Panel and sent us a picture of his new hashtag the timeline Sun Solar Panel shirt, which of course you can get on sunspodcast.com. We have a link on the page right there. I don't know about you guys, but my Sun Solar Panel hashtag the timeline shirt came in last week. I got to wear it down at an AAU tournament in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and it fits great. It looks wonderful. I really dig the design.
We are PHX.
As we mentioned, we are in August. This is the doldrums of the NBA season right now, and there's not a ton to talk about, but one thing that just does keep glaring its ugly head. Kyrie Irving, trade rumors, we'll see whether or not a deal gets done. I thought it was interesting, though. The latest trade rumor I've seen was the Suns offering Bledsoe, Bender, and a 2018 Miami pick, not the Suns 2018, but the 2018 Miami pick for Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, and if you saw John Gambadoro, who has a direct line to, I assume, Robert Sarver or somebody very high up in the organization and has some Cavs sources as well, he went all Dean Warmer on us. That's an Animal House joke for you young people. Go watch it. And said there's a 0.0% chance of a deal involving those guys getting done. Unless Josh Jackson's involved, he doesn't think the Suns will get Kyrie Irving ever.
And I'm okay with that. I just think I really am not a fan of the combo of Irving and Booker long term in the backcourt. I just don't see it happening. I mean, on one hand, you can see that those two would be potentially better than a Lillard McCollum backcourt, and you can win games. Obviously, they've proven that up in Portland. And with the offense that the Suns are supposed to be running, being a Portland-esque offense, it should be something that could be successful. But I just think that's just not the ideal setup of talent, especially if you're going to offload Josh Jackson in the process. It's so funny how polarizing Josh Jackson is, though. Do you guys want to talk about that for a sec?
Let's be honest. This whole thing is quite simple when you look at it. With Kyrie Irving saying, reports coming out this week that he's unwilling to commit to any team that he's traded to beyond the 2 years he has left on his contract, it comes down to this. Would you rather have 2 years of Eric Bledsoe and a potential full career of Josh Jackson, or would you like 2 years of Kyrie Irving where you're maybe a little bit better and then he's gone? And to me, the answer is simple. You take Bledsoe for 2 years and hope he plays at a 85% of Kyrie Irving level, and you get Josh Jackson and hope that guy blossoms into the next Sean Marion. There's no debate about this. There's no reason you go for it. People are blinded because they think Kyrie's a quote unquote star, but I just don't think he's the guy that changes everything here in Phoenix. This isn't Anthony Davis, where it's a no-brainer that you trade for him at any cost, or Kristaps Porzingis. This is Kyrie Irving, who has some flaws that I think is very, very good. He's, I hate the term because you can't really measure it, but he's quote-unquote clutch. But he's not a guy that's going to make you a champion. And here in Phoenix, we've seen good teams. We've seen Western Conference winning teams. We've never seen a champion. And that's what you should be building for. And I don't care if it takes 5 years from now. A title is all that should matter, and you should build it the right way. And I don't think Kyrie puts you that much closer to a championship.
I would say that I agree wholeheartedly that 8 years or 9 years of Josh Jackson is better than 2 years of Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you're going to have to include a Josh Jackson, you don't make the trade, and then you run the risk of 2 years from now going, okay, so Josh Jackson is basically the second coming of Josh Childress, and I really wish we would have made the trade. Of course, you're going to do this, and people will if Jackson turns out to be just not good enough in the NBA. However, I want to go back on a different tack on Kyrie Irving. The things about Kyrie Irving that he brings to a franchise, assuming you're not giving up on your prized rookie to get him, because all right, let me say this in two different ways. First of all, I see a Kyrie Irving trade turning out to be very similar to a DeMarcus Cousins trade. DeMarcus Cousins was a mercurial player on the Kings who was the centerpiece, and they just couldn't win any games with him, but everybody considered him a top talent, even though he only plays one end of the court, unless he's fully engaged all of a sudden and decides to go ahead and play the other end sometimes. And he's considered a top 10 talent and all that stuff. And he ended up getting traded for peanuts. No offense to Buddy Hield, but Buddy Hield is not the future of the NBA. And really, I think that's what's going to end up happening with Kyrie Irving, is he's going to end up getting traded for a lot less value than people thought he was going to get traded for. It just won't happen in the next week or so. I think it'll happen more at the trade deadline, or even a year from now when he's in his final year of his contract. He's in the same boat as DeMarcus Cousins, not wanting to commit to the next team that trades for him. But then again, these guys just want to be loved. And just because he won't pre-commit to Phoenix for an extension doesn't mean he wouldn't stay in Phoenix for the next 6-8 years. So and he's young enough to be part of a winning core, and he's proven he can play on a winning team as long as there's other winners around him. He did prove when he was 20 years old that he can't lead a team to 40 wins. That's absolutely for sure. But he can be a number 2 or number 3 on a team that wins 60 and wins the finals. So let's not totally disparage Kyrie Irving's impact on the game. Also, he is a huge marketing sell. Huge. He's got the commercials. He's got the brand. He's got the face. He's on Team USA, not just the rookie version or the young stars version. He is a guy considered, he would put the Suns back on the map marketing wise, along with Devin Booker. And then Devin Booker would just be right there with him the whole time. And that's his in. So I really think Kyrie Irving brings a lot of positives to the Suns, as long as the Suns don't give up too much and expect him to be the man for the rest of his career. I'm not totally against a Kyrie Irving trade. I am totally against giving up too much for him right away. I don't think the issue is whether he signs an extension or not, because I think that's just something you deal with in a couple of years, and he realizes he can still make more with the Suns than he could make with anybody else.
You can't make this deal in a vacuum. You've got to consider the fact about him being non-committal about the future. You can't, even if it's Bender, a young guy
No player with 2 years left on his contract is going to be committal about the future of an unknown team that he might get traded to.
If I understand it, but it's a huge gamble. And if any GM is making a deal with marketing in mind, I'd fire his ass in 5 seconds, quite frankly, because there's a lot of guys that could help you in marketing, but it's not going to help you win games in the long term. And look, if you're going to trade the guy who was the number 4 pick last year and an asset in the Miami pick, or any of these assets you've accumulated, you damn well better be getting a guy that's going to be your number 1 star in the future rather than a guy that could be a number 2, because Kyrie, what's going to happen is he's going to put you in the late lottery or out of the lottery, being an 8th seed in the West, and then you're not going to have the chance to draft a star like that. So then you're going to have to hope you can try to sign a star, or now with your depleted assets be able to try to trade for another star. If you're going to make a big move, that guy has to be able to be the guy on a roster, and I'm just not sure that, to your point, that Kyrie can be the guy, and that his game's that much different than what you're getting from Devin Booker. You're getting a high volume shooter and a guy that's not necessarily a distributor. So now your backcourt's a bunch of guys that chuck it. I don't know that it's the right move to make. Now, 4 years from now, it could look stupid because, like you said, Josh Jackson's flamed out, Bledsoe's gone, and that Miami pick was number 23, and all of a sudden you think, well, this was dumb. But everything in hindsight, that's a dangerous game to play. Right now, I'm looking at potential, and I think I'd rather just stick with what they have.
Okay, so I want to make a couple of comparisons. One I already made and one I haven't yet. I see this as a Portland situation. So if you are a fan of how the Portland Trailblazers are maintaining their franchise, then you probably want the Suns to acquire a Kyrie Irving, because what Portland is doing is they're putting enough power, star power, into their lineup, especially their backcourt, to win 40 to 45 to 48 games a year, be a threat in the playoffs, have that playoff presence every single year, fill the stadium, sell the tickets, and all that, but not really have the foundation of a franchise, of a finals winning franchise. Nobody really thinks Portland with McCollum and Lillard as their backcourt, no matter who you put around them, could win a championship. But they do think they're playoff bound every year. And if that's the franchise you want, then you want to acquire a Kyrie Irving. Here's the other thing I'm going to do a comparison to. And this isn't 100% right, but it does bring us back to a Suns history item. The Suns did not want to give up too much for James Harden. If we all remember that, and then James Harden became an MVP caliber player in Houston, when really the Suns at that time, the rumor was that they didn't want to give up a couple of starting level players and a couple of young guys. And really looking back on it, even a year later, everyone was like, well, that was the dumbest non-trade in the history, if that was really on the table. We don't really know if Houston would have taken the offer, but the Suns refused to even offer Gortat, Dudley, and I forget who the rest of the package was, but guys that the Suns thought were collectively more valuable than James Harden.
Let's be frank, that was Lance Blanks, so that nothing about that is logical anyways, so I dismiss that. Ryan McDonough would have done that in a heartbeat, because it was pretty obvious that was a poo-poo platter. No offense to Jared Dudley, friend of the show, but that was a poo-poo platter when it came to talent. It wasn't the foundation of the future there.
But at the time, James Harden was not a full-time starter, had not proven, did need a full. Now, the advantage on the James Harden was that they were able to sign him to a 5-year contract the day they acquired him, which actually that is a big difference between him and a Kyrie, because they did get a guaranteed long-term contract from James Harden. But he was much more unproven than Kyrie, and he became a much better player when given the spotlight when given the spotlight in Houston. And then, of course, everyone said any trade package would have been worth it for James Harden.
Yeah, well, to your first point, all right, I'm a believer in the gospel of the timeline, all right? I preach that, like many of our fellow followers out there, and I do not want to be the Portland Trailblazers. We should expect more from this Phoenix Suns franchise and want more. We've been the Portland Trailblazers in the past, and you know what it got us? Empty rafters at the Talking Stick Resort Arena. There is no championship in Phoenix through 50 years, and I don't want to go back to just being good and not good enough. I'd rather trust the timeline, build on that, and wind up with a championship caliber roster, then shortcut it and wind up with an okay team that's a 5 or 6 seed for the next 5 years and never accomplish anything more. I'll take 3 more years of losing if it gets that banner in the rafters. That's the only thing we want as fans. We've gone through hell for, whether you've been a fan for the last 7 years or the full last 50 years, you've gone through hell and the ups and downs. And the one thing that makes it all worth it, that makes it okay for the fact that we've wasted so many hours and so much money on a team that's never won a title, is actually winning a title. And until then, I don't want to hear shortcuts. I don't want to hear, well, Kyrie and Booker are good enough. Unless you're going to win a title, I don't care. And I get it. Kyrie could be a building block to that, but I don't see it if you have to give up Josh Jackson and a lot of talent to make that happen. That's just the way I feel. Good is not good enough for me.
A couple of things, because you guys have been going at it for a minute here. Dave brought up the James Harden, how they got him for 5 years. Was that a sign-and trade? Because I believe you can only sign a player for 4 years after trading for him, right?
Yeah, I believe he was able to sign a 5-year because it was
they got the bird rights.
And it could be 4, but I'm pretty sure that they traded for him in such a way as an impending on his rookie deal that they were able to do the 5-year extension.
The other point is Dave brought up DeMarcus Cousins, where you mentioned that they got peanuts. They only got Buddy Hield. I would point out that the Kings got Buddy Hield plus 2 picks. And if you look at what they were able to turn around for DeMarcus Cousins, if you look at the team now, that they actually have a lot of young talent on the team and a bit of a promising future. But to that point, if you look at some of the other stars that were traded recently, where you look at a Jimmy Butler, who was traded for a wash of a disappointing rookie in Chris Dunn and a guy in Zach LaVine with an ACL injury. If you look at Paul George, where they got a Victor Oladipo on a long-term contract, but he's making $20 million a year, and Sabonis, who he was all right, but you aren't seeing a lot of return for players that are non-committal right now in the NBA. So what the Cavaliers might be looking for, sure, they should definitely ask for Eric Bledsoe, Josh Jackson, and a 2018 first rounder. Doesn't mean they should get it, but they should definitely ask for it. To your point, Espo, and I think Dave mentioned this as well, it's a terrible pairing in the backcourt, and it will look a lot like a Portland Trailblazers team who, not to mention, those guys are in the luxury tax right now. They had to get rid of Allen Crabbe just to shave off some of that money. Is that where you want to be as a franchise, going into the luxury tax for a team who's going to get the 8th seed perpetually every single year, who is drafting at the end of the lottery, if they're even in the lottery, and you can't build your team through the draft, and then you're kind of handicapped with your cap situation? I'm not sure that Kyrie Irving will have much of a different result than you've been complaining about, Espo, in making the playoffs, getting in the 8th seed, getting bounced in the first round year after year.
Well, and can we bring up the other fact? There's these ridiculous reports that Cleveland would love Devin Booker. Yeah, and I would love $1 million to be delivered to my front door right now, but it ain't going to happen. It's just, there's so many stupid reports right now. I want to suggest this, and you guys can veto it, but I think we need to ban the Kyrie Irving talk right now until something actually happens, because these rumors are getting ridiculous, and we're wasting so much breath on discussing this stupid thing. It's like the zombies we talked about earlier. I think we just need to put a bullet in its head until something happens.
Well, the Suns did tell both Devin Booker and Josh Jackson that they weren't going to be traded, correct?
Well, they supposedly did, and I'm waiting for the press release or the leak from the Suns that they've also told Jurgen Bender the same. I don't think the Suns are as all in on Bender as they are on Booker, Jackson, and Chris.
All right, guys. So we had some fun last week with a couple new games. I want to introduce another one. You guys remember the game show in the 80s, Card Shark, where you would wind up basically picking, is the card higher or lower. Is the next card higher or lower than the one that's showing?
I do. It's a fun game.
I assume Dave probably played it. Like, he was probably on the show. He's that old. But so that's just my assumption. But I want to do a version of that. We're going to play high or low. I'm going to give you a topic, and you're going to tell me, is it higher or lower than the number involved in it? So the first one, ESPN predicts the Suns will win 30 games this year. Will it be higher or lower than that?
I think it's going to be lower than that.
Yeah, I'll go with lower as well. Just in the West right now, they aren't competitive, nor are they trying to be. And something that we haven't really talked about a lot on this episode is their lack of two-guard depth with Brandon Knight. Tearing his ACL, his left ACL at a Pro AM game, but that lack of two-guard depth, I think, is going to come back and hurt the team. And they're hoping for, most likely, depending on how you're looking at it, but if they're really in on the timeline, they're hoping for a season that puts them at less than 30 wins.
I go lower just simply because the West got so much better, and the Suns really didn't get that much better. So we're supposed to believe they gained 5 wins just by playing Eric, and we're assuming this is with no injuries to this roster, that they're going to simply get 6 games better by just having Eric Bledsoe play a full year rather than resting him. I just don't buy it. I'm going to go lower as well. Number 2, NBA TV's Matt Weiner mentioned the timeline on Game Time the other night. Higher or lower, 25 times the timeline is mentioned on national TV this season.
Oh, lower. You said national TV. How many games are the Suns going to have on national TV? 3?
You got to remember that includes NBA Game Time, their highlight show, Sports Center, any of these shows on the 4,000 national networks now.
I'm gonna go higher. I'm gonna go a lot higher. And the thing is, you just said how many times will the timeline be mentioned, not how many episodes on which the timeline will be mentioned. I mean, I think NBA TV's season preview that they're going to do a half-hour preview for every team, that alone will probably have timeline mentioned about 5 or 6 times. And I think anytime there's going to be some kind of highlights of Booker or Jackson or whatever, it's just so easy to say. It'll just take off. They won't always give credit to where the origin is, but just like the process, we all got sick of hearing the process. I think the timeline is going to continue as long as the Suns keep following that.
Let's be frank. Nobody's giving credit to where this originated anyways, but I agree. It's going to be the sensation that sweeps the nation this year. I think it's going to be well above 25 times. Next, we've got LeBron will text James Jones 5 times about potential trades before the season. Higher or lower, gentlemen?
Lower. There ain't nobody that LeBron James wants on this team apart from Eric Bledsoe.
I'm going to go lower, although I would not be surprised if it's higher, but none of us will ever find that out. Obviously, those guys have known each other for a very long time. They're the only 2 players in NBA history to be in 7 consecutive finals. And I know that they converse. I'm sure that they converse back and forth. And now that James Jones is in the Suns front office, there's probably already been a half a dozen variations of what about this, what about that, texted over as ideas. I remember way back in the day, Lon Babby cracking some joke that assistant GMs and front office guys' jobs is to come up with 1,000 variations a day and see which one sticks on a wall for trades. So I would not be surprised if it's higher, but we're never going to hear about it. So I'll go with lower on anything that's verifiable.
Are you kidding? I'm saying they've already probably exchanged about 200 texts involving this. LeBron is in full help me get Kyrie the hell out of here mode, right? He's blowing up James Jones's phone any chance he gets, all right? He's probably FaceTimed James about this. So I'm going to go way, way above 5 already on this. All right, another one for you. Alex Len will have signed with the team by August 20th. Higher or lower? Will it be before or after that date?
After. I'm going to go after. I think he is going to there's no Nobody signs anything in August. I'm sorry. This is a really bad month. People are on vacation. Front offices are just taking some time to decompress. They've been going for 11 straight months. August is the only time they actually get to decompress and or go off and do their charity things. Like I think TJ Warren might be over doing an Africa thing right now or somewhere overseas. Earl Watson last year did his Mexico trip at this time to promote the NBA. But otherwise, these guys are just decompressing a little bit. I would say Alex will probably sign his qualifying offer right before training camp because there's no point not doing it.
Yeah, I'd go after, too. I mean, look at how long that Tristan Thompson situation dragged out until I can't imagine. And, if you're Alex Ling or Alex Lin's agents, it's not like, if he had a multi-year deal or something, I'm sure he would have signed that already. But I can't imagine. Like, parties are playing a waiting game right now, and it's not in Alex Lin's best interest to hurry up and sign a qualifying offer.
Yeah, I go after, and I think we get the most pathetic holdout in NBA history. The saddest holdout ever. And the final one for you guys, 50% of the people will complain about the Suns' new jerseys, higher or lower?
Oh, I definitely think it's going to be higher. I think it's just human nature to complain about anything new. People hated every jersey that's every jersey set that's ever been released by the Suns because it's different than the last one. And even the people who wanted something different are never happy with what the different is. And now you hear people, even with these little leaks that this is coming and this is going, the only thing they can potentially agree on is sleeves and some color choices like orange and gray people aren't in love with. And that might be a majority that like or don't like the fact that, those are discontinued. But the jersey itself, the design, the font, the angle of the word Suns, the placement of the player's name on the back, whether there's starbursts on the shorts or what, you're going to have more than 50% of the people hating what's rolled out, but then defending it 4 years later when something else is about to roll out. So I'm definitely over on the 50.
Yeah, I got to agree with Dave on that one. Just human nature.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm going to tell you this. They probably shouldn't complain, and you're going to be happy because purple's back in a big way. But that's all I'm saying, all right? That's all I'm saying before I get myself in trouble.
My favorite section of the show is reading your guys' listener comments that you leave us over on brightsideofthesun.com. We have two for you this week. The first one was posted by Purple People Heaters. It said, Sarver and Colangelo had the same number of rings.
That is factual. Correct. Ding. Next question.
Yeah, that is factual. They just go about what they do in totally different ways, and neither of them figured out the magic formula.
Yeah, they don't have the same amount of wins. Let's make that clear. But the same amount of rings is correct.
Like, for example, let's do a little touchback to an earlier part of the show. Jerry Colangelo.
You didn't touch me at all, Dave, but that's all right. Let's go with the touchback.
Yeah, trust me, and I never will. The harken back that I want to do is that Jerry Colangelo would have someone like a Kyrie Irving on the team to get 45, 50 wins, to get into the playoffs and have a chance to have a magical year that would go all the way. And that's the kind of player that a Jerry Colangelo would have acquired. So let's not just say that it's Sarver being, looking for cheap ticket sales and wins. That was a lot of what Jerry Colangelo did, is he put fans in the stands because he had relatively winning teams, even though they weren't always championship caliber.
All right, now the next comment, I thought this one was a lot of fun and really insightful. Suns Lifer on Bright Side of the Sun said, and they were referring to the worst trades in Suns history that you guys talked about on last week's episode. He said, Rick Roby for DJ. Jerry Colangelo was always aggressive to get the next piece. This was the worst trade ever. Giving up an all-NBA first-teamer for the Celtics backup center. Roby came injured and was never a factor. And I want to add on to this by saying that I went back and because this was actually a trade that happened in 1985, and so I found a newspaper article that was talking about it. And it says this was a trade that seemed too good to be true. Dennis Johnson for Rick Roby. The Phoenix Suns, in return, received a poor rebounding second-string center who played very little and is out for the season with an injury. So I went on Basketball Reference and I looked this up. In the season that Dennis Johnson was traded over to the Celtics, he played 80 games. He started in 78 of them. He averaged 13 points, 4 assists, and 4 boards a game. Rick Roby for the Phoenix Suns, the season that he was traded over to the Suns. He played in 61 games. He started for 4 of them, and he averaged 5.6 points and 3 boards a game. That does seem fairly lopsided, gentlemen.
Yeah, and I had Bob Young, beat writer emeritus from the Arizona Republic. He was the Suns beat writer for a long time. He also brought up this trade, and it was an oversight. Quite frankly, it was an awful trade, and it goes in the category, and we talked about this last week, Dave, of Jerry Colangelo's eternal search for a legitimate center in Phoenix.
Yes. Trading really, really good, functional, smaller guys for that elusive center, even though that elusive center was absolutely average or below average for their prior team. We got onto the Dan Marley trade, same exact kind of thing. Although, luckily, Dan Marley didn't help lead another team to multiple championships like Dennis Johnson did.
Well, that's because he was dealt to Cleveland and he had no chance.
That's true. Colangelo learned, I guess, right?
Mailbag. The first question on our Facebook page comes from Arik Saffron. I apologize, Arik, if I mispronounce your name. What do you guys think about Coach Watson? Should he be part of the timeline? We'll start this off with you, Espo.
Yeah, he should be part of the timeline because he's great at building culture and helping these young guys acclimate to what the future to the NBA game after they come in from college. The question is, can he develop into the coach that once they're out of this, what I'll call infancy stage, and they're ready to win, is he the guy that can do that? That's the biggest question with Earl Watson. He's got to grow along with these players. If he doesn't, I think when it comes time to win, it may become time for a different coach. I have faith that he's a smart enough guy. He's got enough great mentors along the way that he will evolve into a fantastic X's and O's coach, but there's a lot of room for growth right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have a very similar take from Espo on this one. I think Earl Watson is suffering from fans who don't want to apply the same potential for future like they do with Dragan Bender, Marquise Chris, and even Devin Booker and Josh Jackson, saying, just think about what they're going to be 2 or 3 or 4 years from now. They want Watson to be already realized and maximizing these guys' potential today. And so on one hand, as you mentioned, Espo, that Watson is setting a good culture. I mean, it's really hard, and Jared Dudley even commented on this at the end of last year. It's really hard to create a positive culture for 82 games. It's great to start a training camp with a positive culture. Everybody can do that. But to keep that positive culture all the way through a 60-loss season out of 82 games, 59 loss, it's really rare that the guys don't tune you out. And Earl Watson is really good at making sure nobody tunes out. So he's got that going for him already, which he absolutely needs today. The question is, who will Earl Watson, the coach, be in 2 or 3 years? He will be a different coach. If he isn't a different coach, then it's just like, what if Marquise Chris never develops beyond 11 points and 5 rebounds a game and 75% of the plays completely mentally checked out? What if he never gets beyond that? Well, he's still going to make a lot of money. He's still going to have a job in the NBA. And, he'll just eventually become like a JaVale McGee where he signs on with teams after a long time and just sometimes carves out a role and sometimes doesn't. But Earl Watson may end up in that same boat where he never develops beyond what he is today. or he could actually develop. Earl Watson is developing every day and every month and every week. And the key is, can he hone those skills into something that's executable? Dragan Bender may never turn out to be a much better NBA player than he is now. And at some point, potential is not, you're not signed on for potential. But Dragan Bender has 4, 5, 6 years before that happens, because he's going to be given a lot of chances. We should give Earl Watson a chance to grow too. We should not expect him to be an already realized, fully capable NBA coach when he's only in his 3rd year of coaching on any level.
Oh, I always worry about my responses on the show, just because I know that Suns fans have a lot of opinions that vary, and a lot of them are very strong. I think that Earl Watson is the worst coach in the NBA, but I fully subscribe to the fact that if you're going to develop a team, one of the things you're developing is a coach. Although I do think it's easier to develop a team with a coach that's already developed.
Well, I don't think it's that. I don't think that, and to be frank, I don't think that's that hot of a take, but I feel it is, since the Suns were the worst team in the NBA, and usually when you're, or second worst team in the NBA, and when you're that bad of a team, usually some of it comes down to X's and O's coaching. So I don't disagree that right now he's not a very good coach in the way that you're talking about, but they were at such a deficit when it came to culture. Things were so bad around there. Coaches were talking bad about front office and all this. There was tension, and there was just bad locker room chemistry and everything. Everything bad that you could have was sitting there, and Earl has actually found a way to turn that around, and that, to me, is important. And hopefully the X's and O's get there, but I don't disagree with you necessarily right now, Tim, that he's not a very good coach when it comes to executing the on-court plays and stuff.
Yeah, I can't say I was a fan of his roster rotation throughout the season either. But all that being said, give credit where credit is due. And to your guys' points, he really did reset the culture in Phoenix, and that's not easy to do. Going up with the next question that we got, again, on our Facebook page at Sun Solar Panel. This is probably my favorite question that we got. This one's from Jurgen. I'm not even gonna Vanderpitt, however you say your last name. I apologize. It looks like you're likely overseas. Regardless, Jurgen wanted to know, what will everybody do when the trade buzz will die down and there are only the darker days of the NBA offseason until the Suns season kicks off again? That's a question that we have been asking ourselves internally for the next month or so on this podcast.
Yeah, actually, we're pretty darn lucky that there's some kind of new leak on a Kyrie Irving trade every day so far, because at some point those are going to stop leaking, and then yes, it is completely the dog days. In years past, Brightside has actually been fairly successful relative to other blogs, although, traffic is just down, period. Interest is down in the NBA. People need a decompression month. But then you've got the diehards who are dying for new information or some new take or some new angle to focus on during this off season. So what we do on the bright side is we start developing plans for having season preview articles that roll out, and so we allow people to help us predict how players are going to do in the next year, and reevaluating how other teams did throughout the NBA as well is a good thing for the summer, so we can reset our expectations for the next year, because teams don't always do the same exact thing the next year as they did the prior year, and so some teams got better, some teams got worse. So we are actually only mere weeks away from starting up those preview series articles, and so that'll keep interest going. But as far as real news, it's going to be this kind of news. Hey, there's a little tweak to the potential Kyrie Irving offer. This is the only kind of news we're going to hear between now and late September. And so we're going to have to start finding other ways to get interested, or just allow people to take a decompression month.
Unlike Dave, I'm not going to use this time for a shameless plug. I'm just going to tell you, I've got the bunker ready.
Go to brightsideofthesun.com. That is where you're going to find any Suns information you're going to need between now and training camp.
See, I have my bunker ready. I'm ready to curl in the fetal position and watch YouTube clips of the 92-93 Suns and the 7 seconds or less Suns and dream of better days. That's my plan on how to get through August. But honestly, we'll probably spend a lot of time talking about the greatest Suns jerseys in history because we're going to have to come up with something to talk about, and that's always a fun topic. So that's at least one of the next 3 or 4 weeks during the dark days that we'll do. They'll still be fun to be had.
And you know what? Pitch it if you're listening right now, or since you are listening right now, I should say, pitch us ideas. Hit us up on social anytime at Sun Solar Panel on both Twitter and Facebook. We always like hearing from you guys. Another episode is in the books for the Sun Solar Panel, a Phoenix Sun show, part of Almighty Baller Radio. Make sure that you follow us individually on Twitter. You can find Greg Esposito at Espo. You can find Dave King at Dave King NBA. And you can find myself, Tim Tompkins, at Radio Tim NBA.
We are PHX.
So we interrupt this great podcast that you're listening to. My name is Kevin Rayfuse.
I'm Tim Tompkins.
And I'm Justin Kuzart.
And we host the Drive and Dish NBA podcast.
We cover every team in the league and a bunch of really fun segments like Random NBA Player, Drive and Dougal, and Hot Takes from Reddit.
So when you're done listening to this podcast, give us a search on iTunes or whatever podcast streaming app you're listening on.
We're also at driveanddishpodcast.com. We are the Drive and Dish NBA podcast.